Did Pakistan plant a mole in Washington to influence American foreign policy against India? Our cover story tonight is based on a major claim made by a prominent American political scientist. This story revolves around a man called Moeed Yusuf. He isn't just another researcher, he's a man with a powerful network. He will now lead the strategic policy planning cell of Pakistan. Now, Mr. Yusuf has a shining resume. Before taking his news job, Moeed Yusuf was working at the United States Institute of Peace, USIP. This is an American government think tank, a group that is funded by the American taxpayers. The charges against Mr. Yusuf have been made by a well-known political scientist named Christine Fair. She says that while Mr. Yusuf was in Washington, he pushed Pakistan's diplomatic agenda. He wrote articles and programmed documents that propagated Pakistan's agenda, and all this was happening on American taxpayers' expense.
Quite frankly, so there is no question that he was his mothership was the Pakistan embassy. There is no question about that. I mean, you can look at his testimony. I'm listening to him on NPR. All he ever did was basically say peace in Afghanistan comes through working with and through Pakistan. Right? He always argued for giving Pakistan more money. Don't sanction Pakistan. Pakistan is poor boo-boo Pakistan. I mean, you can simply look at his body of argumentation to see that he was constantly advocating on Pakistan's behalf. The question, and so from my point of view as a U.S. taxpayer, right, why am I paying someone to lobby on behalf of a country that kills my citizens and my allies? Now, now to be fair, if he was doing this at Brookings or Carnegie or Stimson, I might be annoyed, right? But I would not be morally aggrieved because those institutions are privately funded. But he was doing this on my dime.
Moeed Yusuf was working with the United States Institute for Peace, or USIP. This think tank receives its funding from the American taxpayers, and Christine Fair, who was also working with this organization at one point, believes that USIP has become a vehicle for Pakistan to lobby and influence the US government. According to Christine Fair, when Moeed Yusuf was around, the USIP hosted a variety of Pakistani lawmakers.
Right. And Moeed Yusuf, look, he was the premier venue. Whenever a prime minister came through town, a foreign minister came through town, they always came to USIP, which was a U.S. taxpayer-funded event. But they explicitly excluded people like me from attending. Now, you can do this if you're Stimson or Brookings. You can't do that if you are a U.S. taxpayer-funded institution.
It doesn't end there. When Christine Fair tried to raise this issue and complain against Yusuf, she says she was ignored. Then she reported Moeed Yusuf to the FBI. She also says that she went to the U.S. House Oversight Committee. This is an investigative committee of American lawmakers. It is one of the most influential and powerful panels in the U.S. What happened? Nothing. No one in the government followed up on her complaints. In fact, Christine Fair says that she was threatened for speaking out.
I had received a threat. And the ISI never signs its threats. Love ISI, right? When you get a threat from the ISI, you know it, because that's the intention of these threats. So I had immediately called the defense attaché, who's also the ISI station chief, and I said, hey, why am I getting this threat from your goons? And a very heated exchange ensued, where it was very clear, because he basically cited from it, that he had seen a copy of my book proposal. And this was the proposal for fighting to the end. And at that point, only one person had seen it, and that was Shuja Nawaz. And so there was one issue that came up in that conversation. But he also cited other things that I had said in a meeting with Ambassador Munter. And the only other people who were not USG during that meeting were Moeed and Marvin Weinbaum. So I was very alarmed that things that were said in an environment like that got back to the ISI station chief.
A journalist in America also filed a freedom of information request. What is that? This is like the right to information in India. You can file it. The journalist asked the USIP for email exchanges between Moeed Yusuf and officials at the Pakistani embassy. The USIP refused to share any information, saying that these emails are quote-unquote exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. And after all this, after years of entrenchment in the American system and policy making, the very same man, Moeed Yusuf, will now work in Pakistan's National Security Division. This organ of Pakistan's security establishment drafts the national security policy. It is headed by the Minister of National Security and takes all decisions on national security matters. This case raises very serious concerns. How deep have Pakistani assets infiltrated the very organizations that are supposed to advise the American government on policy making? How has the Pakistani state systematically cultivated and maintained these assets despite red flags? Those who toe the Pakistani line are rewarded with state-sponsored visits and visas. Those who speak out against Islamabad are denied access and shunted out.